Is there a proper way of giving tzedakah?
Sure.
He's the fundraiser. You should know.
Yes, you write your check to EMET.
Okay, next question.
Next question.
Okay, what is the... No.
You know, as you may probably guess, in Judaism we have laws about everything, including giving charity. So the first thing, there is a hierarchy for giving charity, and there's also different levels of charity that could be given. So for example, the highest charity you can give to a person is to help him find a job, because then he's not going to need to keep on begging people for money, and he or she is going to have like much more dignity. So that's the highest charity you could give someone, to give them a job. The second highest form is you give somebody a loan, right? Even though you don't think they're really going to give it back to you, but you say to them, it's a loan. I know when you have the money, you will be able to give it back to me, because that also makes the person, no one wants to go with their hands out like this. So you say, yeah, I would like to give you a loan, right? I'd like to give you a loan. Then the next thing you could do for a person after that is you give them the money anonymously. Like they don't really know who it's from, because people in general, it's like embarrassing. Like, oh, they know that I need money. It feels a little bit embarrassing. And then finally, just to give them the money with a smile and to know that it's from you. So that's one form of hierarchy. There's another form of a charity hierarchy, which is if your family needs money first, you have to make sure they're taken care of. Then you go out from there. So basically, the more you owe to a person or to an organization, the greater you have to give. You have to give them money. So if you have an organization, for example, that's done a lot for you, that's been with you through many years, and then so you're making money, thank God, and it comes time to give charity, and someone comes up to you and says like, oh, hey, I have a friend over here that needs a little bit of money. So it's fine to give them, but you have to have your priorities straight also, and you have to make sure that the family members that, God forbid, may need money, or the organization that helped you a lot that may need money, comes first before people on the outside. So it's a very logical hierarchy in charity. The more you owe to somebody or something, you have to make sure they're tops on your priority list. And last but not least, you have to also make sure that there's a difference between charity and maaser. Maaser is to have to give 10%, right? So of what your post-tax income, right? Just income you make post-taxes. So you have to, not the income you make post having, going out for $100 dinner or something else, just taxes. Post-taxes, you give 10% because you're saying, I realize the money's from Hashem, and I want to give this part away. And at first, it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult. So we have a rule in Judaism. It's called fake it till you make it, right? And so you just do it even though it hurts. And then after a while, it feels great. You really feel like, oh, this money's not yours. And if you have to, of course, make sure that you're able to pay your bills, and then you can give 10%. If you can't pay your bills yet, try to make your bills smaller. And if you can't make them any smaller, then you don't have to give 10% of your salary. You just give tzedakah, and even give a quarter to one poor person, you'll be able to fulfill your obligation. So again, there's a hierarchy in terms of when you're giving, the way you give to a person. You want to make it as discreet as possible, and don't make the person feel like they're begging. And best thing is to give the person a job. Then the more you owe to the organization, to the individual, you want to make sure you give them first. If like some organization that you have no association with asks you for money versus someone that you deal with, almost on a weekly basis, you have to make sure you take care of the people that take care of you first. And then last but not least, you have to give 10% of your post-tax income as long as you're able to pay your bills.
Thank you, Akiko. Just a question for everyone. Is this a topic that you would like to hear much more in depth about the laws of tzedakah, when you're supposed to give, when not to give? Is that something you're interested in? Yeah. Because Rabbi Yochanan, who I mentioned previously, has a fascinating PowerPoint presentation that he gives over about tzedakah. And it has little movie clips connected to it. And I learned a lot when I was listening to it. I'll give you an example of a halacha that I didn't know myself. Let's say your mother-in-law, thank God you should have a mother-in-law like this, gives you $5,000 and says, please go buy yourself a new car, okay? Or a new used car. And they say, okay, here's $5,000. Are you supposed to give ma'aser on that $5,000? The answer is no. You're not allowed to give ma'aser on that $5,000 because she gave you the money with the intention of you to buy a car. Now, if you go and sell the car, you have to deal with her, and also you have to give ma'aser on that money afterwards. Okay, so if you're interested in us having, I know somebody else just asked another question here. If you have loans to pay and can't afford to give the 10%, you still have to give. There's a lot of interesting questions related to the laws of tzedakah. And I'm not going to answer this question because I don't feel like I know enough to answer this question fully unless someone in the panel does. But I do think that we should have such a discussion specifically about tzedakah. I'll say one other point that Rav Moshe Feinstein, a great sage, pointed out that in addition to giving 10% of our money, we need to give 10% of our time. And that's a very, very important thing. It's not just enough to give money. But as we heard from Amna before and others who are involved in giving, in charity, and charity is not just a physical act of giving money, but it's actually also giving our time, volunteering ourselves to help others. And one final point, when one gives tzedakah, you know, people talk about many different benefits of giving tzedakah, but I think the one that resonates with me the most is that when you go to work, and where you're working as a computer programmer, as an accountant, or as a musician, or whatever you're doing, very often you find yourself just doing manual labor. You're building something, you're coming, you're going, and you wonder, like, what's the spiritual aspect of what I'm doing? What's holy about this job? I'm just punching some numbers into a computer. But if you give 10% of your money to tzedakah, every action that you do becomes a spiritual action, because part of your actions are holy, and therefore it makes the whole action holy as well. We have a question.